Okay, we have now installed our new crank sensor. Crank sensor is behind the balancer or crank damper. You do have to have a special puller, or I should say a puller, period. You don't want to use a jaw puller, like a 3-jaw puller, because you can ruin the rubber layer inside the damper. You want to use actually a puller that goes into these 3 bolt holes that you see and pulls on those. But anyway, it's actually not real hard to get to. Shops charge an arm and a leg supposedly to do that. All you need to do is jack the car up, pull the wheel off, pull out the inner fender here, just a few fasteners, and get your puller on there, pop that guy off. It does take 7mm screws. Okay, you need 7mm screws. You can't find them at most hardware stores. You have to have them go to a specialty bolt store, or GM 5.3 liter valve cover bolts, I believe, are 7mm. If you're able to get a hold of those at a junkyard, or you can order them on Amazon, but you need a 7mm bolt, okay, to hold that puller into the crank damper. So once you get that off, you swap out your crank sensor. We got our Mr. Oscilloscope hooked back up again. I just did the cranking test with the new crank damper. This is what we're looking at. Start at the beginning. Here's where the motor started cranking over. So we got pretty wide square waves, right? That's normal. And here's where the motor finally spooled up to cranking RPM and held it there for a while. And if you notice, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 full waves fitting in the screen here. They look nice and square. We don't see a bunch of spikes in the square waves at the top or the bottom, right? They look pretty clean. Let's go over a few frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? We still have 6. Remember, with the old crank sensor, it would vary from all the way down to like 3.5 square waves all the way up to 9. It was all uneven. We had a lot of noise at the top here and at the bottom, a lot of spikes. This is a nice clean sensor. That's what you want. Okay, again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You could probably count that as 7. Okay, but again, that's what you want. Nice and clean, all the way until we let off the key. See, still nice clean 6 to 7 square waves on the screen, all the way until we let off the key and the motor starts spinning down, right? Slows down RPM, but the key is still on while it's spinning down, so that's why the sensor's still active, right? Until it's off. Okay, that is what you want to see. That's a good new crank sensor. We're gonna put the spark plugs back in, try starting this car. One other thing I want to go over here is the design of the crank sensor that we replaced. This is the old one. Notice it has RTV around some of the holes. Check the manual when we replace these. It actually tells you to put RTV on the bolts, not oil, RTV. A lot of the bolts on this seal into the crankcase, and if you don't put RTV on them, you'll end up with an oil leak. Okay, here's an old crank sensor. It looks fine, smells fine, doesn't smell burnt, no corrosion or anything, but as you guys have seen from the video, it is bad.